Emily Maitlis isn't at the BBC anymore. She stepped down because it wasn't left-wing enough for her. Can you imagine? But while she was there, she was the archetypal BBC lefty. You know the sort. North London bubble, lives in Hampstead or somewhere similar, reads The Guardian, creams off £325,000 a year, votes Labour. Classic. The absolute epitome of the limousine liberal, cloistered in an affluent little metropolitan bubble, utterly shielded from reality, acts like she's caring and compassionate while having nothing but sneering disregard for the working classes, who she doesn't even meet when they fix her toilet. Emily's salary continued to rise, even as her audience plummeted, with viewing figures for Newsnight falling from over 1 million to just 200,000 under her tenure. And her personality is apparent from her broadcasting style. Unbearably smug, abrasive and obnoxious, revoltingly arrogant, still creaming in a grossly inflated salary despite her decidedly middling intelligence, an utter lack of charm or grace. And all of those qualities shone through in a quite remarkable talk she gave at the Edinburgh Television Festival, where she made it plain that broadcasting should be reserved exclusively for voices exactly like hers. She dripped with disdain at the suggestion that other perspectives be given any airtime at all. In truth, her smug, self-righteous elitism now defines the BBC, a broadcaster that's turned its back on the concept of objective reporting in favour of partisan tub-thumping on Brexit, Donald Trump, populism, Israel, and any other subject you can think of. But remarkably, Emily even concluded that the BBC was controlled by an evil, secret cabal of Tories. And to this end, she cited Robbie Gibbs' appointment to the BBC board. It's indicative that she was able to unearth virtually the only Conservative involved with the BBC. But for Emily and her peers in the Twitterati, one is just too many. As Rod Liddell said, the liberal middle-class left runs about every institution in the country. But when just one right-winger is appointed to any public body, the lefty toys are flung out of the pram, and the dummy is spat out onto the Mexican granite floor tiles. After all, Maitlis didn't object when New Labour's Culture Secretary James Purnell was appointed the BBC's Director of Strategy, or when the even more barkingly left-wing Jess Brammer was made Executive Editor and given oversight of BBC News programmes. Because people like Emily only worry about bias when the other side gets a look in. And there are a lot of people like Emily. It's true that the Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, was also a Tory, but he's proven completely useless. Like Tories the country over, he's terrified of trying to impose his views on the perpetually shrieking left, so he cowers before them instead, and pretends that the BBC's shocking bias is being confronted. It isn't, and he's been as supine and useless in that regard as Boris Johnson was, because the BBC still churns out a relentless wave of left-wing, identity politics, woke drivel across its news, drama and radio. The BBC are utterly blind to all their gaping flaws, of course, and in perhaps the best definition of irony you'll ever see, they have one of George Orwell's defining quotes carved into their headquarters. If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. Unless it's on the subject of Brexit, climate change, COVID, immigration, Islam, diversity, the Tories, women in sport, trans issues, the economy, Donald Trump, Israel, and every other subject under the sun. Because the BBC has no interest in listening and just wants you to shut up about it. All their staff walk past that quote every day, yet it's never even registered with one of them. Amazing. The fact that the BBC's leftist dominance is insufficient for Emily is remarkable. We can only assume that even the tiniest right-wing incursion into the BBC makes the leftist monopoly they've enjoyed there for decades seem threatened. And so she jumped ship, like a wealthy woman who burned her own house down because she spotted a single spider in the attic. But really, Emily outing herself as a lefty is the most shocking development since Tom Daley announced that he's gay. I mean, who would ever have guessed? As Alison Pearson commented, who could possibly have deduced during 16 years of impeccable impartiality in the Newsnight presenter's chair that all along she was an aggrieved Remainer, seething with contempt for the Brexit vote and living with her investment manager husband in the Socialist Republic of Notting Hill? Honestly, you could have knocked me down with a hand-plucked, ethically sourced Siberian goose feather. Now that she's left the BBC, Mateless is free to say all the things she couldn't convey merely by perpetual eye-rolling, glowering interjections, and exasperated sighs whenever someone right of centre was foolish enough to enter the studio. In her speech, Mateless sneered at the concept of both-sidism, as if the task of the national broadcaster was to present just one side of an argument, while ignoring the position held by the vast majority of the country. She also claimed that the Brexit she feared was responsible for the economic decline of recent years. Yet it's odd that every nation in the EU has suffered the exact same depression. The economic decline was caused by the lockdowns and green policies she endorsed. Yet she's now denying the problems were created by the policy she supported, while claiming all issues arose from the vote she opposed. It's a blatant lie, provable by any analysis of the facts. But her stupefying arrogance won't let her accept the truth. Her aghast reaction to the idea that opposing views should get airtime lays her hypocrisy and hubris bare. She cannot comprehend why views she does not hold should even be considered. It's the sort of monstrous arrogance behind every left-wing tyranny in history. In fact, she's overt about this. In referring once more to her little cult pet obsession, Brexit, Mateless sneered, "At what point do you say, actually, democracy is not as important as the future economy and stability and prosperity of the country?" Yep, you heard that right. Democracy is not important because Emily knows best. Except, as stated, the economy was hollowed out by the unnecessary lockdowns and green taxes that she demanded. But her speech not only lays bare her shocking hubris, it also reveals just how much danger our liberal elites pose to democracy and free speech. Because the most wealthy and powerful people in society have nothing but contempt for any form of genuine liberty, despite the fact that their deranged worldview bears no relation to the truth. Emily, who would love to control the narrative, thinks the BBC is riddled with Tories and gives tacit support to Brexit. It's an Alice in Wonderland-like inversion of reality, where down is up, black is white, and bad is good. The narrow-minded conceit of these chattering classes has blinded them to reality and warped their perceptions to such a degree that they're no longer able to perceive either clear evidence or their own insufferable condescension and willful ignorance. Emily simply believes that she should be allowed to hold forth on her views with no interference, like a fire and brimstone preacher in the pulpit, absolutely immune to contrary views. She couldn't accept that at the BBC she had a job to do, had a responsibility to impartiality, one she continually treated with contempt. Now, in the private sector, she's free to cut loose with all her partisan bigotry. Though I hear her new podcast isn't going terribly well. Diddums. This might be a wake-up call. Perhaps one day Emily will realise that it isn't all about her. But I doubt it. If you'd like to support this channel, please like, subscribe, and think about buying my books. They're called The Tyranny of the Left, and they go into topics like these in much greater detail. They're available on the links below. please do feel free to pick them up and let me know what you think. Thank you.